Please clap.
Welcome back to Banging the Can, the Houston sports show that does not apologize for championship rings and tings, presented by Bolen Media. I am Ross Bolen, and remember when we were all irate because the Texans foolishly failed to let the Colts beat them in the final game of the season so we could secure the number one pick in the NFL draft? Remember that? Well, it turns out, in the ultimate twist of irony, Davis Mills should never pay for another drink in Houston ever again because he secured the future of this franchise by putting us in a position to draft C.J. Stroud at number 2 instead of potentially drafting Bryce Young at number 1. At this point in the week, you should be fully aware that the Texans beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 39-37 in a shootout at NRG Stadium that had a little bit of everything and may have been all around the most exciting Texans game in 5 years, at least, culminating in a game-winning touchdown pass from C.J. Stroud to Tank Dell with just 6 seconds remaining. It was absolute chaos through and through. We had a backup running back kicking field goals, and that backup running back, Dare Ogunbowale, was only there because Dameon Pierce was injured and out. CJ, the future Stroud, finished with 30 completions on 42 attempts for 470 yards passing and 5 touchdowns with no interceptions and a QB rating of 147.8 in what was the greatest performance statistically by a rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL. I say again, the greatest performance statistically by a rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL. Deshaun who? What if I told you that it took Deshaun Watson being an alleged sexual predator and Davis Mills leading a totally unnecessary last-second game-winning touchdown drive against the Colts for the Texans to lose the number 1 pick in the NFL draft and pave the way for C.J. Stroud to be drafted in the number 2 spot and change this franchise's fortunes for the foreseeable future? By the way, that is called alliteration. In the second half of this game alone, C.J. Stroud was 16 of 20 for 325 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the second half alone, Stroud was 16 of 20 for 325 yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you understand? CJ's 470 yards passing against the Buccaneers is more than any of the following NFL quarterbacks ever had in a single game: John Elway, Brett Favre, Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Terry Bradshaw, Randall Cunningham, Johnny Unitas, Carson Palmer, Andrew Luck, Dan Foots, Roger Staubach, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. None of the people I just named ever threw for 470 yards passing. He did it as a rookie, C.J. Stroud. And look, after the first couple games of the season, I think anyone watching the Texans was pretty confident that we had almost accidentally stumbled into something pretty fucking special with C.J. Stroud. But now, as the Texans are 500 at 4-4 heading into Week 10, having seen what we have seen, there can be no doubt that this kid is our franchise quarterback. This kid is the future of the franchise. And as long as he's not a closeted sexual predator with a penchant for Instagram masseuses, the Houston Texans are in a fantastic spot. And Texans fans have something to be extremely excited about. And despite having perhaps the silliest team name in the entire NFL, the Houston Texans are back, baby. We are 2 field goals away from being 6-2, kids. Wrap your heads around that. 2 games, really, that we should have won away from being 6-2. This is the turnaround we were all hoping for when the Texans went out and made DeMeco Ryans their head coach of the future and used the number 2 and number 3 picks in the draft on C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. And it is really happening, folks. Credit to owner Cal McNair, by the way, for finally getting his shit together, and credit to GM Nick Caserio as well. There's a lot of luck involved. A lot of great breaks and a lot of weird breaks and a lot of bad breaks led us to where we are today. But by God, it is somehow coming together. So let's talk about some of the other guys on the field aside from CJ Stroud who deserve a ton of credit for all the excitement and positivity currently surrounding our Texans. Tank Dell is someone we were all pumped to see in a Texans jersey after watching him play at U of H, of course. And it was cool how CJ Stroud apparently asked for Tank Dell by name to be drafted. And it was nice that we were able to scoop him up in the 3rd round with the 69th pick. Nice indeed. But nobody would have guessed that through 8 games, Tank Dell would have more receiving yards than any other rookie receiver in the history of the franchise through 8 games, except Hall of Famer Andre Johnson. More than DeAndre Hopkins, Tank Dell has through 8 games. That is crazy. Tank Dell has been awesome, truly awesome. He finished on Sunday against the Bucs with 114 yards on 6 receptions and 2 touchdowns, including the game winner with 6 seconds remaining on the clock. Tank Dell. Yup. Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz had his best game as a Texan with 10 receptions and 130 yards and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz? Yep. Noah Brown had 6 receptions for 153 yards, including a 75-yard catch-and-run touchdown that had me saying, wait, who the fuck is Noah Brown? Noah Brown? Yup. And Nico Collins, of course, reeled in another touchdown and continues to look great out there. Nico and Tank Dell complement each other really, really well in terms of route running and spreading the field. And look, to take it back to CJ Stroud, one thing that every truly great quarterback in the NFL does is make their receivers look good regardless of who is out there catching the football, right? It was always insanely impressive how Tom Brady would roll into some seasons with just a bunch of random dudes we had never heard of as his receivers, and he would turn those randos into household names. That is what CJ Stroud is doing with this Texans receiving core. He's taking what looked like, on paper, not all that special, and making it into something really, really special because he's throwing guys open. He's seeing the entire field incredibly well. He's checking down. He looks like a fifth-year veteran quarterback out there. And he's making all these guys who, even if some Texans fans were excited about seeing them play, guys like Tank Dell, guys like Nico Collins, he's making all these guys, including Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz, look like Pro Bowlers. We had 3 receivers with over 100 yards receiving in that game against the Buccaneers. I don't even know when the last time that happened is. Years ago. And this is why, and I've talked about this over and over, but just to take it back for a second, this is why we were all so excited when we got Deshaun Watson several years ago, right? Because we saw over and over and over that no matter how good the rest of your team is, no matter how exciting the defense is, no matter how many future Hall of Fame receivers you have on the squad at the same time, when you've got Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, when you've got Arian Foster as your running back, J.J. Watt on the D-line, it doesn't matter if you don't have a quarterback. If you don't have a guy who can distribute the football accurately and efficiently. And we never really had that. And then we got Deshaun Watson, and it looked like, holy crap, here it is, finally. And then we all know what happened after that. And it's been a total shitstorm to get to here between then and now. But oh my God, we're here. And I'm like the rest of the league and like the rest of you, in awe of CJ Stroud at this point. Like, I didn't really know what to make of him when we drafted him. And after the first couple games, certainly I was very high on him. But it feels like with every passing week, minus the game against the 0-6 Carolina Panthers, like, it was every game I've been like, he's just getting better. He just keeps getting better. He just keeps getting more impressive. His poise in the pocket, his ability to do what he is doing with a still fairly banged up and not all that effective offensive line. From scrambling to checking down to seeing the field to throwing beautiful accurate passes, some of which are outside of 20 yards. He threw a couple passes to Tank Dell in this game that he dropped into a bucket that I was like, oh my God. The kind of pass that when your quarterback throws that kind of pass, you go, holy shit, we've got something going here. Unbelievable, this kid. And the defense has been all right. This was not a great defensive game against the Buccaneers, so I'm not going to spend any time today highlighting defensive play because this one was all about offense. But if we can keep the offense humming and DeMeco Ryans can get this defense anywhere close to where he got San Francisco's defense when he was their coordinator, and we can get some semblance of a run game going, because that didn't really exist against the Buccaneers either. I'm not trying to get ahead of my skis here, but there is a legitimate argument to be made that the Texans could be one of the best teams in the AFC in the relatively near future. And I cannot believe I am saying that at all, much less after 8 games in this new era of Houston Texans football. But if you're being completely objective in having watched this now 500, 4-4 team through 9 weeks of this NFL season, that's where we're at. It is exciting, and there is a lot to be stoked about if you're a Texans fan. And again, huge shout out to Dare Ogunbowale for coming in as the emergency kicker. Watching this dude do kickoffs was hysterical. There were players on our team, including Tank Dell, who had absolutely no idea what was going on when he was kicking off and when we were going for 2 repeatedly because we didn't have our field goal kicker Fairbairn. It took me a couple 2-point conversions before I was like, oh, Fairbairn is hurt. And this was very funny at first, then pretty quickly became concerning. And then they actually brought him in, Dare, to kick a field goal, and he nailed it. And that was altogether awesome. But yeah, I mean, I wish they had him doing field goals the whole time instead of doing these failed 2-point conversions over and over, because like many of you, I'm sure, I had Texans -3 and only winning by 2 because we didn't have a goddamn kicker was fairly devastating. But altogether, unbelievably exciting game. There was still a couple of decisions here and there in terms of clock management that I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. And then there were some decisions in terms of clock management that I was like, yes, you're doing it. Yes. Still a couple of play calls where I was like, what the fuck? Again, the defense did not look altogether impressive. Gave up a lot of points. A lot of points to a Buccaneers offense that I don't think we should be giving up that many points to, but altogether, what a game. What a Sunday for the Texans. Just awesome. Awesome stuff from CJ Stroud and the boys. We're doing it. We're really doing it. One thing about Houston that you better make peace with if you want to survive, most of the year, it is incredibly fucking hot. And if you don't dress accordingly, you will die accordingly. Fortunately, Bird Dogs will have you looking and feeling good no matter the season in the most comfortable and versatile pants, shorts, and bathing suits in the entire world. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. I've been wearing Bird Dogs for several years now. I wear them to do yard work, to work out, to record this show while I'm hooping. I wear them to go swimming. I wear them when I play golf. I wear them to sleep. I wear them to do everything. They fit great, they feel great, and they look great. They're insanely comfortable and come in a ton of different designs, all with funny names like the Art Fart Knockers, Uncle Bucks, Teddy Rubskins, and Forest Pumps, just to name a few. I have an entire drawer of my dresser at home occupied solely by Bird Dogs with like 20 pairs of shorts and 5 pairs of pants in there. Pants, great for the golf course, Bird Dogs pants. Or the office, or going out to dinner, or hitting the bars. They're just as comfortable as the shorts, but they look sharp. They look a hell of a lot sharper than you would think, considering how comfortable they are. And now they've got great-looking polo shirts as well that are just as comfortable as the shorts, too. So click on the link in the description below to go to birddogs.com/BTC and enter code BTC at checkout. They will throw in a free Bird Dogs tech hat with every order. It's a beautiful hat. Beautiful Bird Dogs hat. For free when you go to birddogs.com/BTC. Use code BTC at checkout. Once again, that is birddogs.com/BTC, code BTC. In other absolutely stunning positive news for Houston sports fans, the Rockets are also sitting at 500 with a record of 3-3, which, if you watched the first couple games, is awesome, awesome news, because we looked like dog shit initially, and I was like, oh God, Here we go again after spending all that money on Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and bringing in all these veterans and Jeff Green, and we looked just as crappy as we did the last few seasons, getting a new coach in Ime Udoka, and it still looked like we were going to be one of the worst 3 teams in the league, frankly. And now through 6 games, things are looking up. Things are looking up. Dylan Brooks is averaging 17.8 points per game on 60.4% shooting from the field and 60% from 3 with a 92.9% free throw percentage, by the way. Those are impressive numbers for anybody, especially a guy that everyone joked about. He became a meme, for fuck's sake, this guy, Dylan Brooks. He became a meme. Have fun learning Chinese, buddy. He went from that to averaging 17.8 points per game on 60% shooting. 60% from 3. 92.9% free throw percentage with that goofy-ass form that he has in his jump shot, and it's working. So everyone who hated on that signing through 6 games, which isn't much, he's making you look like a casual dumbass. And I was not ever as low as a lot of you were on Dylan Brooks. Not to toot my own horn or like try to give myself credit here, but it seemed pretty evident to me that the Rockets saw something in terms of value, because that was a lot of money, a big bag that they threw his way. And it feels like now, having watched 6 games and seeing how effective he is defensively, there have been a couple of moments here or there that turned into bad highlights for Dylan Brooks, like when Steph Curry crossed him up twice and then got him to fly by in a 3-second span before nailing a 3 in his face. That was rough. There have been a few moments like that for sure, but that's what happens to good defenders. That's what happens to these guys that are constantly guarding the best player on the other team. And if you've watched NBA basketball, you know that. You're going to get exposed time to time. Offense tends to win out over good defense when you're talking about all-time great players, especially like Steph Curry, right? Dylan Brooks and the attitude he has toward these challenges, like we're playing the Lakers tonight, I believe, and he's talking about trying to lock down LeBron James. He's not afraid to say things that the media are then going to go use as sound bites that may backfire on him. And that's fine. It's all about attitude and approach. And he knows his job. And if he can score 17 points a game on 60% shooting while guarding the best player on the other team every single night, then he's worth every penny we just spent. And there's no argument to be made otherwise. So that's huge. It's really good for Rafael Stone, who, frankly, I think people like myself have lost all faith in. I don't really know what to make of this cat. I have no idea if he knows what he's doing. But through 6 games, things are looking better for Rafael Stone. Dylan Brooks has looked like everything we would want him to be. And Fred VanVleet, although he started off kind of rough and his shooting percentage is one of the lowest on the team, he has looked like the veteran leader we need in a point guard, which is the main reason he was brought in, right? To coach up some of these younger guys and make sure that they've got all the tools that they need in their toolbox by the time that they're actually contending for a playoff spot and something real. Jalen Green looks to be coming around a bit. Tough couple first games for him. But now Jalen Green seems to be finding his confidence. Alperen Şengün continues to be extremely impressive. He's one of the only guys on the team over the last few years that there really aren't that many bad things you could say about. He doesn't have that many tough stretches. He doesn't really slump. He's very, very consistent. He's become a harder worker on defense. His defensive productivity has definitely gone up so far through 6 games this season, which is good to see, because that was one of the areas that you could point to in the past and say, like, he can't guard a brick wall or, he can't guard a scarecrow. He's getting better. He's getting better. We've been dealing with some injury issues. Amen Thompson, Tari Eason both hurt. But all in all, the Rockets and new head coach Ime Udoka seem to be headed in the right direction, which is really, that's all we can ask for. And I was worried after the first few games that wasn't going to happen this season. And now we're doing it. So we'll do more Rockets talk on here as we get deeper into the season. For now, I'm still trying to figure out, first of all, how the new in-season tournament works and why it's broken up into different sections over the course of the first few months of the season or whatever. I knew it started the other day, and then suddenly it wasn't happening anymore. You saw those crazy courts that they had. Incredibly distracting. It looks like you're playing, NBA Jam or in a Boise State. It's like the Boise State football field of NBA courts, but every single team has them now for the in-season tournament anyway. But not too much to say about the Rockets yet. Things are looking up through 6 games. That's basically where I'm at. In Astros news, first of all, let's start with the positive. Congratulations to Mauricio Dubon for winning the American League Gold Glove for the utility position. If you watched every game this year for the Astros, you know he deserved it. This guy was great everywhere we put him in the field. Second base when Altuve was out. Center field when he got time there. Dubon was awesome. He was reliable everywhere we put him with a glove. And as such, he won the Gold Glove for the utility position in the American League. The only Astros Gold Glove winner for 2023 I would add. We had a couple other nominees, Kyle Tucker included. Mauricio Dubon is the only one who got it, and he deserved it. And as I said, I thought he was my regular season MVP for the Astros in 2023. He's great. I'm happy we have him coming back next year. Now, in not so great news, it sounds like there is a lot of confusion internally regarding the managerial search to replace Dusty Baker, and I mean in the front office. So according to the Athletics' Chandler Rome, who you should all be familiar with if you follow the Astros closely, General Manager Dana Brown appeared to be under the impression that bench coach Joe Espada was still under contract with the Astros when he is, in fact, not. His contract expired. I'll read you some from The Athletic here. The Milwaukee Brewers are searching for their next manager, and according to The Athletic's Ken Rosenthal, have Houston bench coach Joe Espada on their list of candidates. Espada has interviewed for the Astros opening, General Manager Dana Brown said Tuesday, but will not be permitted to speak with the Brewers or any other interested team until Houston makes its final choice. We hold the keys to permission, Brown said Tuesday at the general manager's meeting. Quote, we have to go through this process before we can allow Joe to go interview, because what if he goes there and gets the job? That's pulling from our guys. If we don't hire him and they're still looking for a manager and they request permission, he would be definitely a guy we would say, hey, yeah, you can talk to him. Espada, however, does not need the Astros' permission. He coached this season in the final year of his contract. A person familiar with the situation told The Athletic on Tuesday the contract expired on October 31st, meaning Espada is free to speak with other teams. The fact that Dana Brown did not know his bench coach, and at least from the outside looking in, leading candidate to take over as manager after Dusty Baker's departure, was no longer under contract as of October 31st is a little bit scary. That is not the kind of vibe we are looking to get from the front office this offseason. Now, there is a chance Dana Brown misspoke or got confused in the moment, perhaps, I guess. But to not know the guy that the bulk of your fan base is rooting to take over as manager is actually totally legally allowed to go interview with whoever, that you don't hold the keys, that he doesn't need your permission to go get that Brewers job or at least interview for it, is fucking scary. This is, as I've said over and over, a pivotal offseason for the Houston Astros with a lot of important decisions to be made. Now, the team continues to downplay that, saying they're not looking for any outfield help. They've got the catcher of the future already in Diaz, that they're very happy with their pitching rotation. They might look for a lefty in the bullpen, but for the most part, they're not going out and saying, yes, we're going to go into this offseason spending big bucks to try to take us over the top and make sure we get one more ring while this window is still open. They're not publicly acting with the sense of urgency that I am hoping for, and I am hoping that they have behind closed doors. Because even before the 2023 season, you saw rumblings about this after 2022. That you can't take your foot off the pedal. That in baseball, these opportunities, these windows, they come and they go, sometimes more quickly than you realized. And the Astros, while I have said repeatedly, are still one of the top tier teams in the league, and a lot of the power rankings you'll see come out over the next few weeks, they're always going to be in the top 5. Sometimes they're going to be top 3. Sometimes they'll be top 2. But you have to respect the fact that the window is limited. And when you have a season that is very disappointing in a lot of different ways, like we just did in 2023, where injuries don't go your way, you don't even win 100 games, Your manager ends up retiring after the fact, in part because of criticism from the media and from 30-year-olds on Twitter. There was a lot of negativity. You talked a lot of shit after you still won the division, and then the Rangers end up winning the World Series, an in-division rival, an in-state rival. And when you've got the Rangers on the come-up, and you've got the Mariners on the come-up in the AL West, you have to respect all of this. And you've got to make sure you get the right manager for the job. You've got to make sure that your roster is ready to go into next year competing for a World Series championship. Not for the fucking AL West division title, not for another ALCS berth, for a ring. And we were not prepared for that this year. So on top of figuring out why the fuck Minute Maid Park is cursed, on top of figuring out, do we need to make any changes with the pitching rotation? Is Framber Valdez going to be good? We expect Luis Garcia and Lance McCullers Jr. to be ready sometime around July. Is Hunter Brown going to take the next step? Is Diaz for sure, no matter who we hire as manager, the next catcher, the starting everyday catcher? Like, there are a lot of decisions to make. There's a lot that needs to be done. And for Dana Brown to be confused about whether or not Joe Espada is under contract is fucking horrifying. It's a bad, bad, bad look. They've got to get their shit together in there. Look, I'm not in the front office. Nobody is except for the people who work there. All right, even guys like Chandler Rome with all the insight and inside information, it's hard for them to really know because this team, especially during this 7-year run, has been very tight-lipped. They play things extremely close to the chest. A lot of discomfort as a result. But there is a lot of negativity externally with regard to the way Jim Crane is handling his ownership now, with the way that Jeff Bagwell has been allowed to kind of step in and have a lot of say in the front office, with the way it seems that while Dana Brown was an exciting hire, that he's kind of not really being allowed to do his job to the full extent, like he's basically acting as, a puppet to Jim Crane, like that. Those are not good vibes. And now for this whole Joe Espada confusing situation, just bad. This is not good, okay? So I don't know. I'm not in there. I don't have any inside sources feeding me information about exactly what's happening. But from the outside looking in, it's starting to get pretty concerning. Yeah, and I'm not a doubter. I've said it over and over. Jim Crane has earned the right to be as cocky as he wants to be. He's the best owner in Houston sports, maybe in Houston sports history. The results certainly have been better than any other team we've ever had in terms of longevity, competitiveness. 7 ALCSs in a row is something that puts you behind really only the 90s Braves in terms of repeat, sustained success as an MLB franchise. 4 World Series appearances is great. Getting 2 of them is great. Still feels like we should have at least 3 wins, though. And it still feels like we don't have the amount of respect we should for the window and how it may be closing over the next 3-4 years. Lot of big decisions to be made after the 2024 season as well, with guys like Altuve and Bregman and Kyle Tucker and potential extensions or free agency, or it's going to be a big 2 years here for the Astros in determining whether or not they can stretch the 7-year run into a 10-year run. And if we're going to do that, one guy who, without argument, has to have his fucking I's dotted, his T's crossed, his P's and Q's in order, Dana Brown. So for him to not know that Joe Espada and his contract expired on October 31st, and to be talking to the press about this as of November 7th and be incorrect is not good. So if you're listening and you're in the front office, do something. Help. Fuck. Unbelievable. That will do it for today's show. But remember, every episode of Banging the Can is available on youtube.com/@bangingthecan. For those of you who would rather watch instead of just listen, youtube.com/@bangingthecan. Frankly, even if you're a Spotify or Apple podcast person, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe on YouTube. It helps us out, helps the show grow. And on that note, please share the most unapologetic Houston sports show with your Houston sports friends and family. your dad, your uncle, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your grandma, anybody that you know, friends, family that's obsessed with Houston sports, tell them about the show here at Banging the Can. Also, support our sponsors. This week we have Bird Dogs. Click on the link in the description below to go to birddogs.com/BTC. Enter code BTC at checkout. They'll throw in a free Bird Dogs tech hat with every order. Check out my media startup, Bolen Media, at bolenmedia.com. My comedy show, The Ross Bolen Podcast, wherever you get Banging the Can. Follow us on TikTok at Banging the Can, as well as Twitter and Instagram at Banging the Can. If you're an F1 fan, check out Bolen Media's F1 show, Formula Bone, at youtube.com/@FormulaBone. I'm Ross Bolen. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WRBolen, and it's an exciting time to be a Houston sports fan. We went through a few years there when we had Harden on the Rockets and we were competitive in the Western Conference and looked like we might have a small window with Chris Paul on the team to get to the NBA Finals. We all know how that ended. We had Deshaun Watson. We had the Astros cruising. It looked like we were in the golden age of Houston sports altogether, not just the golden age of the Houston Astros. And then that fell the fuck apart. And we took a few years, but it looks like we're recovering. We got an exciting head coach for the Rockets in Ime Udoka. We've got some veterans to teach the young core of guys what they need to know about success in the NBA. The Texans have their coach and quarterback of the future, and that is pretty much etched in stone at this point through 8 games, heading into Week 10. We're in a good place. There's going to be a lot to discuss, so stick around with me on Banging the Can for the foreseeable future. And I'll be back next week. Until then, H-Town, stay down.